So in the introduction, they said things like inspiration, seasoned speakers, I'll be enchanting you, etc. Along with a glorious list of achievements. The only true statement there is butterflies in my stomach. So you can forget about all of that. What I really hope to do just in this 15 minutes is not give you a long speech on any accomplishment that I really have had, but more just a message from the heart, which is a summation of a lot of my own experiences over the last few years. So with that, I'll begin. That is a picture of me and my family back in 2012. A French magazine chose it as an opportunity to send a photographer all the way from France to follow me around for a whole day because they wanted to depict the stories of a few people in their magazine because that was their idea of depicting people who had had some success. You see, there was something to that idea because a lot of people would say that that is a life of success. By age 32, I'd gone from a middle class background, traveled the world, had a solid education, had an enviable job, a wonderful family, a home to call my own, and most of the simple luxuries that money could buy. And if you think I'm so shallow to think that that is success, I have more to tell you. Nice people. We volunteered. When charitable causes came our way, we listened. We helped in the best way possible with the means we had. But an incident happened in that same year which would shatter my perception of success and bring me down a long journey of reflection. I'm going to describe that incident. Picture me, a much younger me, a very successful me, a so-called successful me, in this company that I had been working in for 15 years. So that is me. And as is typical in an organization, I had just got a new boss, moved from another organization. Suddenly, one fine day, for the first time in my life, I faced harassment. Stunned, I was just waiting, wondering what to do about that harassment. It repeated again and again. Shocked, I reached out to my peers. This was one of the best companies in the world. I was a strong woman. I didn't look like somebody weak. How could this happen to me? I asked them. They said, oh, welcome to the club. They had been harassed too, multiple times, and in earlier organizations where he had been before. Shocked, I took it upon myself to change the status quo. I reached out to his boss, we are going to call Mr. A. I went and explained what happened. Mr. A happened to be my friend and he was so empathetic. He listened to me and then he said, Nitya, you know times are tough. You know he brings in the revenue. You should let this go. Shocked, I said, what do you mean let this go? What if this happened to your wife, your sister, your family? Would you say the same thing? I am going to take this to HR. This time, he was not as empathetic. He warned me. He said, Nitya, I warn you, let this go. I was not going to let this go. I took it up to the CEO. I happened to know the CEO as well just by the nature of the job I do. He said the same thing. He said, Nitya, times are tough. You know how people behave when times are tough. Let this go, don't make it an issue. I didn't let it go. I took it to HR. I figured HR had the neutrality. HR did not worry about revenues. HR would do something. They listened very empathetically and they followed the process. They asked me, along with your written complaint, would your peers also give the same written complaint? I said, hello, if they were going to give the written complaint, I wouldn't have had to be here in the first place. They are afraid of repercussions. They don't want to give the written complaint. But if you talk to them, they are willing to speak to you off the record, so you know if things really happened. HR was relatively junior compared to what she was up against in front of Mr. A and the CEO. If they had taken a position, she did not have the strength to stand up against that position. This took many months. I was dejected. I finally reached out to another organization, found myself a new job, and decided to go on to work for Mrs. B. Mr. A by now was really upset that I had not let it go. And this is the point where he did not just keep quiet and let me move on. He reached out to Miss B and said, whatever he did in order to block the transfer of me from my position to where I would be under Miss B. This is where the story takes a turn. Miss B stood up, turned around, and essentially told him, keep your toxic world out of mine. With that, I went on to work with Miss B for 3 more years, completing 18 years in that organization. But what this did was inspire me deeply. Because you see, what had happened was, all the people in this picture were known to me. They were my friends. They were good people, just like I had been a mostly good person. It was just that when they were affected, and it was going to be inconvenient for them to stand up for something because it could affect them, they chose a different path, an understandably different path. Mr. A too operated out of self-interest. He had revenues to report, he had a job to keep. The CEO, the same thing. In fact, these were the sorts of people who did amazing work otherwise. They did CSRs, they employed people, they gave promotions where it was due. They were otherwise very nice people. In fact, the perpetrator, the boss himself, was quite a minority here, you see, because 5 other people could have intervened to make a change, and they didn't. And yet there was Miss B who inspired me deeply. She did not know me, she had no relation to me, and she did not need to go up against the grain, against the CEO or her peer, Mr. A, to take an issue up on my behalf. But she just did, because it was the right thing to do. She was the only one who overcame self-interest and took action in the face of others who had faced the same situation and put self-interest and thus inaction as the choice. This made me realize that good people tripped up. And maybe, just maybe, I was one of those good people too. Maybe I too trip up when it is inconvenient to me. Stunned with this realization, I thought about it some more. If 99% of the time we're really good people, how does that look? I mean, it looks like this. If any of you or I are in a public transport and an older lady comes along, I'm sure most of us are going to stand up and give her the seat. If a friend or even an acquaintance is in need of some emotional support, we're going to drop what we have, go down, sit with that person and help them out. We might even help a stranger out on the street. You see a blind person crossing, you will get down from your vehicle and take that extra effort to go help that person cross. So if we're mostly good 99% of the time, is it such a bad thing that 1% of the time we're just human? Sometimes the self-interest is important and we put that ahead of maybe what is the right thing to do. Unfortunately, what I realized was that the 1% of the time when you put that self-interest ahead, you don't take the inconvenient path and you take the easier path, what you end up doing is a lot of damage. Damage as big as climate change, corruption or genocide. I mean, really? My small 1% is causing all of this? Let's take a quick look. We were just talking earlier in our conversation today about corruption. Who is creating that corruption? It is you and I that needs to run our business faster, and we need the licensing faster. It's you and I that need those documents for the house, right? It is a hard fight. It is a long fight. But there are some people that are taking up that fight. But until then, when you aggregate that 1% action across so many people, it becomes corruption. What do you think brings climate change? Everybody in the room today knows animal agriculture is one of the leading causes of climate change. Yet, on each of our plates is the very food that leads to that climate change. Are we going to make that change? It is inconvenient. I'm used to it. It's traditional. It's how it's always been. Why am I going to make that change? But see where it led to. It led to climate change. This is a picture from the Holocaust. Everybody knows that. We all know the bad guy, Hitler, right? But did we know that good people impacted this too? President of America then, Roosevelt, was a good man. In the end, he sent the troops in to rescue the Jews from the concentration camps. I have unfortunately visited one, and I can attest to the horrors from just this many years on from seeing what happened. But it was the same Roosevelt, 2 years before the end of the war, when he could have saved many lives, did not. An entire ship of people seeking asylum, Jewish people seeking asylum, had landed on the shores of America. They had been denied asylum in Cuba already. He turned them back. He turned them back because he was afraid of the political capital he would lose in his own country. And we blame just Hitler? There were good people participating in this. So what did I learn? I learned that success is not at all what I thought. Success was not me being just that nice person who volunteered when I could, who was kind when the time was right, who went on with my life of self-pursued idea of success. Success was avoiding the 1% trap. Success was, what do I do when it's actually inconvenient? And that is all life was about. This was very stressful. Now I had learned this deep truth about myself and my own behavior causing such damage. What was I to do? Where was I to turn on how to change this around? Am I to suddenly stop having self-interest? Am I to suddenly drop all the ideas of success I had and start becoming a saint? That was not going to happen overnight. That was not going to happen ever. So what else could I do? I turned to religion, or at least the religious texts, as people often do when faced with a crisis. Not having been a religious person and in fact favoring atheism, it was an easy place to start because I had no preconceived notions. I actually read the Gita. I read the Dhamma that the Buddhists follow. I actually also read the Holy Bible. This was over many years, not overnight. What was stunning was that all of them actually say that the only purpose in life is that 1% I was talking about. The only purpose in life is actually apparently to destroy all of these that are age-old traps we have all been falling into from time immemorial. And we've been hiding behind the mostly good idea of success. It meant taking the inconvenient path. So how do I destroy this? So to destroy all of this, first of all, I had to sit down and challenge the status quo. The status quo is the world you have. Are you happy with the world you have? And if you're not happy with the world you have, ask who is to bring that change. Question our own decision making. When faced in that moment where the choice is between self-interest or doing the right thing, what are you going to do? It comes down to that one moment. It meant we create our own filters. For me, it is the Gita. For you, it could be anything else. So I went ahead and created my own filters. And this is a minor subset of what the Gita shares. I decided that in every action I have, I'm going to try to look at the intent behind my action. Am I here to speak today because I want fame? Or is the intent of my coming here to maybe share a message that could bring some positivity to the world? That would be one example of intent behind every action. I would look at the silence in my inaction. How many injustices happen around us that we don't stand up against? Even as we speak, within our neighborhoods, within our city, within our country, and in the world, there are tons of injustices happening. Who is to speak for those minorities? My silence would be one of those issues perpetrating that. How about my reactions? How do I react when fame comes my way or when infamy comes my way? That says a lot about how far I've come on this journey. Finally, it came down to what have I contributed to this earth? Death could come at my doorstep on any day. What would I have achieved at the end of my life? Would I just have led a life of where I have taken from the world and given far less? It came down to taking the inconvenient path or the easy path, and we decided that for our family, for the breadwinner, it didn't matter what path they took. There's supposed to be a squiggly line on this side. I don't know if you can see it, but there is a circuitous path on the inconvenient path and the easy path. And the easy path would give you the larger amount of money, and the circuitous path could give you far less. The easy path for my children as they graduate from college, or the harder path. And finally, even for somebody like me who's focused on social contribution, it didn't matter whether I was running a business or running an NGO. It all came down to what is the path I finally took. With that, I leave it to you all. Thank you.